Hi, this is National Master Dan Heisman, and we're here with another video to help you improve your chess game. Haven't done a lot of videos lately. I've been working on my new book. Hope you don't mind, but I have videos that cover about every possible level of chess improvement. So good stuff on the channel here at Dan Heisman Chess. Today I'd like to talk a little bit more about that idea I talked about in a few previous videos, which is using an engine to help you improve your game. And I picked one of the most famous problems to start with because I wanted to illustrate a point. When you're showing the engine and you're making moves, did you ever notice that the value of the evaluation, if you make the best move, it stays the same, and if you make a mistake, it goes down, but it can never go up. You can never make a move where if you're up by, 0.3 and you make a great move, you go up by 1.7. That's not possible. Why isn't that possible? Well, it's something Zermelo proved in 1913 in a mathematical theorem, but we're going to look at it a little bit today. All right, and this is the end, not the end, but it's getting near the end of the famous puzzle. It's a puzzle where it's black's move, and you have to figure out what black has to do, and then you have to figure out what white has to do, and so on. Okay, so black's move, and white is threatening queen takes b8 checkmate. He's also threatening a takes b8 and get a rook or a queen checkmate. So black has to stop the mate. It doesn't do black any good to guard the bishop because white can still take and go for a winning position. Let's see if that's true. Let's say black plays queen to h2 to guard the bishop. And let's let the engine play white now. The engine says after that move, white has mate in 3. Pawn takes, we'll get a queen. Queen takes, pawn checks, the king has to go here, and the queen returns all the way to the first rank with a very nice, pretty checkmate. Okay, so clearly, if black plays that move, queen h2, the evaluation of the position says that white's winning. But what if black plays the check? Let's turn off the engine for a second. If someone checked you like this, what would you do? You have to get out of check. Well, there's only so many legal moves you have. You can play king to a6. You can play king to b4. You can play king to a4. Or you can put the queen in the way. So if you want, you can pause the video and figure out what you would do. If not, let's take a look. Well, if you play the aggressive king to a6, this looks awful good. You're threatening b7 mate, you're threatening queen takes b8, you're threatening a takes b8 mate. The problem is that black can keep checking you with queen here, and you're not going to be able to get out of all these checks if he just keeps checking you like this. So that's actually not the best move. The best move, which is one of the most famous moves in history, which is called Mitrofanov's move, I think it's called. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing that right. It's Mitrofanov. Yeah, that looks right. Mitrofanov's move. The right move is, believe it or not, to play queen to g5, one of the most amazing moves in all of chess literature in this puzzle. And that's the only move that wins the game. If black takes the bishop, sorry, it takes the bishop. If it takes the queen, the white will play king to a6, threatening b7 checkmate. And black is in trouble because the queen is now on the wrong colored diagonal. He can't check on the 6th rank, and he has no check along the light squares on the diagonals because his queen's on a dark square, and his queen can't reach the a file. So white's actually winning here. If we look at the rest of the moves, if he plays something like queen b5 check, king takes, and then bishop takes a7, you play c7, threatening to get a queen. If he plays king b7, you take here, and now one of those pawns is going to queen. Black could take one and let the other one queen, or he could just wait there and move the knight in. And then white would play something like a8 queen, deflecting the king away, play c8 queen, king up, And then we've got mate in 3, queen d7, king b8, king b6. There's no knight checks. Knight moves somewhere. And we've got checkmate. Okay, so would you think that when we play a move like queen to g5, the evaluation gets better because we found a brilliant move that saves the game? No, because the engine says if white plays perfectly here, he's got mate in 17, but only if he plays queen g5. All the other moves are a draw. So the engine is saying that the evaluation is white has mate in 17, and if he finds this brilliant move, his game doesn't get better, it just stays the same. And that's always going to be true in every position. If you find the best move and you play it, the evaluation stays the same. If you blunder, then the evaluation gets less. So no matter how brilliant your move is, the evaluation is going to not go up. For instance, let's take a look at the first move of the game. Let's go back to the starting position. People argue with me and they say, but after you play e4, you're controlling more center squares, you're got bishop diagonal, you have the queen diagonal. Your game must be better after e4 than it was before you played e4. Well, let's look at the engine over here. The engine's saying he agrees that e4 is the best move, but he says your position is worth 0.3. Why is it worth 0.3? Because it's your move, and playing e4 will cost you the tempo that gives away your move. And the cost of giving away your move is that you get to open the line for the bishop, you get to open the line for the queen, you get to control the center, but it's not your move anymore, it's his move. And the cost of that value will be exactly how much you get out of the move. So in this case, right now it says if you play e4, you'll be up by 0.3. Let's play that move and see if white's position gets better. e4, and now it actually says, well, in my database with e5, white's position has actually gotten worse by a 0.1. Well, that's just the engine looking a little deeper and rounding it off. But basically what you can see is white has retained his opening advantage after e4, but his evaluation hasn't gone up by playing the best move. In fact, ironically, in this case, it went down, and again, that was just for how deep it was looking in the rounding error, but the actual evaluation was staying exactly the same. And the same thing will happen with black. Right here, black's best move gives him 0.2 for white. If we make that move, it should stay around 0.2, and it does. It goes to 0.3, and again, these are just depth errors and rounding errors. If the computer was looking all the way to the end of the game, it would just say it's a draw because chess is a draw when both sides play perfectly. So it stays at 0.3. If white plays his best move, knight f3, then it's 0.3. Now let's say black makes a terrible move. Right now, white's ahead by 0.3 if black plays his best move, knight c6. But suppose black blunders. If black blunders, then the valuation is going to go down. So let's say black blunders here and plays h6. Aha, look at that. The evaluation just jumped way up and says white's not at 0.3 anymore, he's at 1.8. Why did it go up? Because black made a bad move. When somebody makes a bad move, their evaluation goes down, which means their opponent's evaluation goes up. Well, black's the one who made the bad move. He was at 0.3 for white's advantage, and now it's at 1.8 for white's advantage. So black's mistake has given white an extra 1.5 pawns in the evaluation after knight takes e5. So what we're seeing is what I said at the start, which is if you make your best move, the evaluation stays the same. Yes, it might differ by a very, very, very small amount as the engine looks a little deeper or someone lets it run overnight or whatever it's doing. But if you make the best move, it'll stay the same because it's that move that gives you that evaluation. If you make a mistake, then it goes down for your side. If you're black and you make a mistake, the number gets higher in the pluses. If you're white and you make a mistake, it goes negative. For instance, let's make a mistake for white now. Let's say black plays a silly move let's say he plays a good move like queen e7, and instead of saving the knight with d4, which gives us a 1.8, let's not save the knight. Let's play bishop e2. Boom! All of a sudden it's negative, minus 3.8, because we just blundered our knight, and now black's winning. So the number has gone down because white made a mistake. That's what we'll expect to see. All right, let's apply this to a real game instead of just some theory with a couple opening moves. Let's look at the game between Donald Byrne and Grandmaster Ephraim Geller, played in 1955. I'm going to go over here. All right, we've got Geller playing white, Donald Byrne playing black. This is a year before Donald Byrne played his famous game against Bobby Fischer, the game of the century. Donald Byrne, as many of you probably know, was my coach at Penn State. So we're showing one of his famous games here against Geller. Game opens up with a dragon. Donald Byrne liked to play the dragon. We have the main Yugoslav attack here, which was just being, the theory on this was just being created here in the 1950s. And Geller castle queenside. Later, bishop to c4 became popular, if I can draw the lines correctly. I think today the engines like g4 the best. Well, let's turn on the engine and see if that's true. Mr. Engine, if you're playing here, Stockfish 15, what would you play? Let's show the top 3 moves. All right, we're at 19 ply, we're at 20 ply, we're at 21 ply. We can see the 3 candidates are castles, bishop c4 and g4. It's my understanding, if I let this think overnight, the engine's going to say that g4 is the best move. Right now it says that Geller's move, castles, is the best move. Obviously it's going to be close here. But right now they're 0.7, 0.69, and 0.68. Castles just moved ahead with 0.84. It jumps around as the engine looks a little deeper, of course. All right, so if right now the Stockfish says that white's better by 0.79, if we play Geller's move, which was castle queenside, we should still see it stay somewhere around 0.7. There's his move, and there it is, 0.7, just as predicted. If he makes the best move, the evaluation stays about the same. Now, what's the best move for black? Theory has said it is d5. The engine says the second best move is the Soltis kind of move, h5. The third best move is knight takes d4, but Donald Byrne didn't play any of those moves. He plays bishop to e6. The engine doesn't like that move, so we'd expect the evaluation to go up for white, and it does. It says if white plays knight takes e6, f takes e6, that white is gaining about a half a pawn from before. Why is that? Well, it's not the double pawns. Those extra pawns in the middle could be helpful for black, and the semi-open f-file might be helpful. It's more the fact that the diagonal to the king is weakened a little bit, and that white has the bishop pair. White has 2 bishops and black doesn't. Let's see what Geller played. He just played king to b1. Engine says, not bad, not as good as winning the bishop pair, but okay. Donald Byrne puts his rook on the semi-open file. Geller attacks with g4. The engine says now g4 is not the most accurate. You should take the bishop pair first and then play something like bishop c4, pinning the pawn. I'm sure Geller looked at that, didn't like to do it. So he played g4. Now it says Donald Byrne should play knight d7, where he's only down by 0.6. He plays queen a5, and the engine now has white back up. Notice every time someone makes a mistake, we're playing those what-if games with the engine. We're actually looking at a real game, but we can say, what if this, what if that? We can see every time someone makes a mistake, the evaluation drops on their side. So if Donald Byrne had played knight d7, then he'd be okay. If you're doing the what-if games with an engine, you can play those moves and see what would happen. I can make the board a little bit bigger here. Knight to d7. It says white can sacrifice with knight f5. That's called the Benoni jump in Kamak's book, Pawn Power in Chess. It says black should not take that knight with a pawn. Now this is where you can say, what if? And you say, well, what if he does take it with a pawn? Well, but then when white takes back with g takes f5, this bishop is already trapped. And black's in a lot of trouble because he has the semi-open file against his king. It gives queen a5, rook g1, the bishop's not going anywhere. Bishop takes a2 check. Thanks for your bishop. Black says, I'm in danger with my king exposed. Maybe I should trade queens. Rook takes, threatening to double rooks and win the bishop. King here, so the bishop can move. And it says white's ahead by about 1.5. In our what-if scenario, what if D.Byrne had played the best move, knight d7? And what if Geller had played his move, knight f5? And what if black had just taken it with a pawn? What if, what if, what if? But none of that happened. Queen a5, knight takes. Now he finally takes. The engine says, oops, wrong timing, Mr. Geller. Black's already almost back to equality now with about 0.3. Before that move, it was 1.2 if he had played the best move, knight b3. Pawn takes. Bishop c4, pinning that pawn. Knight d8, guarding the pawn and opening up the rook against the bishop with a discovered attack. Bishop goes back to e2. Now it says black has full equality with knight d7. My coach finds the move, knight d7. Bishop d4. Well, that gets rid of the bishop pair. So even though you're getting rid of his fianchetto bishops, which is something that lower-rated players love to do, they love to trade off their opponent's fianchetto bishop. In this case, the engine says that's a mistake by about half a pawn. It says what he should have done is play something like, if we scroll this back up, I guess we got to make it a little bigger to do that. Let's give him a little more space. It says he should play knight to b5 is the best move. That's not an easy move for a human to find. Also, we trade queens and looks kind of dull. All right, so Geller plays there. D.Byrne plays knight e5. The engine doesn't like that move. Says trading bishops is the right idea. We can see how much better the engines are. The engine's 1,000 points better than the grandmasters. Well, maybe not 1,000, but 800, 900. And all these minor mistakes that it's finding in the game. So knight to e5, f4, starting an attack. Knight bc6. Now if the pawn takes the knight, black can play knight takes. Let's see if the pawn did take the knight in the game. He took with the bishop. So let's play a what if game again. What if he takes with the pawn? The engine says play knight takes d4 after queen takes d4. You can play bishop e5. And now white has to play queen e3. Allows bishop takes c3. If b takes c3, rook takes c3. Probably Geller didn't like this position, but the engine says if you find queen to d4 and play perfectly, you actually have a better advantage than you did before. But that's really, really difficult for a human to do. Let's go back to the main line. So Geller decides to take with the bishop. D.Byrne takes with the pawn to get triplet isolated pawns. And now the engine says Geller is better if he plays f5. If he plays any other move, he drops by 2.5. He finds the best move. If 2.5 is a pretty big mistake, we would expect a world-class player like Geller to not make that big a mistake, to not find that move. Knight to d4. Byrne has a nice outpost. He still has those triplet isolated pawns. F takes g6, opening up the king side. Engine says not the best move. Better was bishop to d3. Pawn takes back. Rook on h to f1. White's still better. Rook c4. The pawn's guarding the rook. If the rook takes and the pawn takes and the queen takes, he's not winning a pawn. Can you see why not? If you can't see it, we play these what-if games again. Let's do it as a what-if game. Rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and now we can either remove the guard with rook takes c3 and then take the bishop and win. The engine says even better is just take the bishop first, and if he takes you back, just play queen here, threatening the mate and the knight, and he doesn't have any way to save both. If he tries to put the knight in the way, we can just take it off with the bishop or the rook, and we're still threatening mate. So Geller can't do that. And of course, that's an easy combination. Geller's going to see that. So Geller plays g5, still has the advantage. Black says, let me attack on the queen side. b5. White's better by 1.2 if he plays bishop d3, which he does. Very good for Geller. D.Byrne doubles on the f-file. Now it says white should play queen g2. This is where engines play so much better than humans. He finds that move. Very good for Geller. Still retains his big advantage. Byrne hits the knight. The knight has to go to e2. He does, of course. Black plays best move, queen c5. And Geller plays queen h3, probably a losing move. The right move was to play knight takes d4 and get rid of that nasty knight. He plays queen h3, and now if white finds the interference kind of move, rook f3, he can win. And good for Coach Byrne. He finds rook f3. Why is that winning? Well, here we go with what if. Geller takes it. His best move was queen g2. What would happen on his best move? Rook takes d3, removing the guards. Why is that good? Well, if you take, we have check first, or rook takes f1, king here, rook takes f1. If rook takes f1, then knight takes e2, and black ends up winning 2 pieces for a rook. The rook can't pin the knight now because of the back rank mate, and black will end up ahead material. All right, back to the game. Geller takes with the rook. Byrne takes. Geller plays queen g4. I'm sure Geller knows what's coming now. Rook takes d3, removing the guard on this square. Now white could resign. White just simply guards the square, but he's down a piece. Byrne says, I insist, take my rook. Geller says, I gotta stop him from taking on f2. Byrne trades the rooks. Then he takes there, just trading off up a piece into the endgame. Geller says, I'm not resigning yet. Byrne says, all right, I'll take. Check. Pushes the pawn. Geller really has nothing to do here. He attacks the pawn on e6. Byrne checks. Byrne checks again, guarding the pawn on e6. And he keeps pushing the a-pawn. Everything wins. Check again. Check again. Takes the pawn. Geller says, I have nothing to lose. I'll just push my pawns and see if you blunder. Your bishop right now is locked out of the game. Maybe I can take advantage of the fact that your bishop can't do anything. Byrne says, okay, I do have a passed a-pawn that I can work with. And finally, Geller resigns. Why did he resign? Let's do one final what if. What if he just takes this pawn? Engine says Byrne can stop the check here with king here. Now there's no check over here. What can white do? He can't even really threaten much of a check. Where could he go? Well, he could probably go to, I don't know, queen here, threatening to check over here, but it doesn't really do that much. Let's see what the engine wants. The engine says, oh, I can just go get a queen or something. Or he says, let me check first. If you move your king somewhere, I will just push my pawn in. If you check me, I get a chance to trade queens. White's like, well, I have no pattern here. There's nowhere I can go with my queen. I can't even give him a check. I can't push my pawn. I can't give him a check. Resigns really is reasonable. The engine says it's now mate in 14. All right, so today we talked about the idea that was first suggested by Steinitz, that was proved by Zermelo in 1913, that your position really can't get better when you make a move. If you make the best move, it stays the same. But if you make a worse move, then it drops. We looked at one of the most famous moves in history, Mitrofanov's move. And finally, we took a look at a game between top Soviet Grandmaster Efim Geller and my coach Donald Byrne in 1955, where Byrne played the dragon and he won, and we looked at it through the eyes of the what if with the engine. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and we're not making this much right away because of the working on the book, but we have an eye on the videos, and hopefully the book will be done by too much longer, maybe by the end of the year, and we'll be making some more videos. If you enjoyed today's video, please tell your friends about the channel, Dan Heisman Chess. If you'd like to subscribe, great. If you would like to like the video, that would be good too. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.